Hi everyone! November the 11th, 2000, in Kaprun, Austria. On a funicular train transferring tourists to the ski slopes on the Godeysen Glacier, all hell breaks loose, and an amazing day on the snowy mountains turns into an apocalypse for the 155 passengers. The Gletscherbahn Kaprun 2 was a funicular inaugurated in 1974, 12,800 feet long, traveling for 10,800 feet inside a narrow tunnel along an average slope of 43%. In 1994, the old trains were replaced with more modern wagons, with a futuristic look, also making them the pride of Austrian ski resorts. Each train was 95 feet long and consisted of 8 passenger compartments for a total capacity of 180 people. At both ends, 2 cabins for the operator, who alternated his position according to the direction of the travel. He operated the hydraulic doors once the train arrived at the station and also communicated with the control center. The plan consisted of 2 trains on a single track connected to the same cable, one train acting as a counterweight for the other. In the upper station called Alpine Center, at 8,038 feet, an engine activated a pulley, so pulling a train along the tunnel while the second one was descending. Halfway, a special double-track section allowed them to cross each other and continue their journey. Like any funicular, there were no engines and fuel tanks on board. Only 42 US-gallon hydraulic oil tanks for the brake system and the door system. 11th November 2000. At 9 a.m., the wagon left the lower station with 162 passengers on board. After only 65 feet from the departure, a passenger who was towards the back of the train, Thomas Kraus, noticed some smoke coming from the empty operator's cabin. Suddenly, the passengers in the rear compartment worried and tried to raise the alarm. But their cell phones inside the tunnel have no signal. Moreover, no emergency buttons or intercom existed, so the passengers were not able to communicate with the attendant, who was in the cabin at the head of the wagon. Meanwhile, the flames together with panic broke out in the compartment. At 9:02, after having traveled for almost 3,900 feet, the flames damaged the hydraulic oil system, thus activating the intervention of the automatic emergency brakes. The train stopped inside the tunnel, together with the train that was descending. A few minutes later, the operator realized that a fire had broken out and reported it to the control center. He was ordered to open the doors and evacuate passengers, but the pressure loss of the system prevented the doors to open. The operator tried to contact the control center to request help, but the fire destroyed the power cable running along the tunnel, causing a total blackout throughout the ski resort. The passengers, unable to get out through the doors, tried to break the shatterproof glasses to escape the flames and fumes. Only a few people in the back of the wagon managed to break through a window, crashing it with a ski pole, and escaped to safety by fleeing downwards, beyond the fire and into the smoke. Among these, there was also Thomas Kraus. At this point, many of the other occupants still trapped lost consciousness due to the toxic fumes. When the operator managed to unlock the doors, allowing them to be manually forced open, the conscious passengers poured into the tunnel and fled upwards. They were not aware of walking into a certain death. Actually, the tunnel behaved like a giant chimney, sucking oxygen from the bottom of the tunnel and quickly sending the poisonous smoke, heat, and fire upward. The operator and the only passenger on the convoy that was descending the mountain in the same tunnel also died from inhalation of toxic fumes. Meanwhile, the fumes continued to rise along the tunnel, reaching the Alpine center. Two workers, having realized what was happening, alerted employees and travelers and fled via an emergency exit. Unfortunately, in the heat of the moment, they left the emergency door open, increasing the chimney effect inside the tunnel and allowing the air to escape upwards even more quickly, further intensifying the fire. At that point, the Alpine center was filled with toxic miasmas, and all but 4 people managed to escape. When the firefighters arrived on site by helicopter, they managed to save 1 of the 4, while the other 3 remain asphyxiated. A total of 155 people died in the disaster, 150 on the uphill train, 2 on the downhill train, and 3 in the Alpine center. Among the people killed, Sandra Schmidt, a 19-year-old German freestyle champion skier, and Josef Schauper, a deaf skier who was awarded 7 times at the Silent Olympic Games. To recognize the victims, the DNA exam was necessary, since the flames, with the temperature that reached 1,000 degrees in the tunnel, liquefied all that was not steel and transformed the structures of the convoys and the poor bodies of the victims to ashes. It was found that the structural defects of the convoys and, in particular, the lack of safety mechanisms played a fundamental role in the tragedy. Each convoy had fire extinguishers out of the reach of passengers, in sealed compartments and accessible only by the personnel. And all because the traction of the wagons was exclusively based on electromechanical system external to the convoys, and, until then, no fire had ever occurred in a funicular, even slightly. In the subsequent and controversial criminal trial in Salzburg, 16 defendants were charged. They all were found guilty on criminal negligence. Almost a year after the fire, the judgment stated that the cause was related to a defect in the fan heaters installed in the operator's compartments, which caused the fire. Since the wagon that caught fire was completely charred, the still intact wagon that was traveling downwards on the day of the disaster was used for the appraisals and investigations. The expert Anton Moore took care of the appraisals. From his point of view, the fan heater was in no way, as stated in the sentence, defective. He pointed out that the fan heater was clearly intended for home use and not for installing on a moving vehicle. He noted the presence of a wooden shoring padded with rock wool, probably installed by the funicular employees, at the desk next to the heaters. According to the appointed expert, Moore, the rock wool was drawn in by the fan heaters and, in combination with the hydraulic oil leak, it could ignite the flames. In the fan heater of the second wagon, traces of hydraulic oil and rock wool were found. This was what Moore tried to explain in his 72-page report. However, he was dismissed from his role while the trial was still ongoing. On February 19, 2004, Judge Manfred Sayce acquitted all the 16 suspects, since there was not enough evidence against them. In September 2007, the prosecutor's office ruled that not even the manufacturer of the heater from which the fire originated was responsible. The funicular has never been reopened after this tragedy, and it has been replaced by a cable car. In 2014, the first section of the suspended track was demolished and the tunnel sealed, being only used to host water and electricity plants for the Kitzenhorn ski resort. Today, I told you about one of the most serious accidents in a funicular in the last decades.